In this guide, we will show how you can configure and verify API access by creating a contract between the API and a specific client application. Once your API is made available to other users, they will have to go through the same procedure to give their clients access to the API. Developers that intend to use the API in their client code will need to submit an access request first. They will only be able to successfully invoke the API once the access request has been accepted and their client recognized as a valid one. This guide is part of a series to help you get started with Akana. Following guides explain ways to further enhance your API product for better discoverability and usability, or clarify more advanced Akana capabilities. This guide assumes you are familiar with the guide explaining how to create an API product. It refers to the API product configuration that was started in the first guide. The Akana API gateway will only allow access to secured APIs by authorized clients. For authentication and authorization purposes, the client must present its identity to the API gateway in the form of a token, for example an OAuth access token or a client certificate. What token is acceptable depends on the access control policy that is attached to the API. Akana allows for configuring and testing client access by means of an app that represents the client. We will show you how to create an app, and how to create a contract between this app and the API. To start, log into your Akana API portal by providing your username and password. For testing and verification of your secured API, you can create an app that represents or simulates a client application identity. To create an app, click Apps in the top-level navigation menu. Next, click Add App. Essentially, you only need to provide an app name and a version number. First, give your app a meaningful name. For example, if you intend to test an API sandbox endpoint, use Test Sandbox Client as your app name. You can provide a brief summary for your app as well as a more elaborate description. You can determine for which portal users your app will be visible. If you like to limit visibility to yourself and designated users only, select Private as value for the visibility field. Apps are versioned entities, so a version number is required. Give your app a version number. Click Finish to save your app. Akana automatically generates the app identity details, an app ID and a secret that may be used when authenticating. You can review the generated credentials by clicking Show Keys. To view the generated secret, click Click to View. We will now create a contract between your app and a secured API. First, select the API that you want to allow your app access to. Click My APIs to view the list of your API products. With this example, we will use the Pet Store API product that we created in the first video of this series. From the listed products, click Pet Store API. A contract between an app and an API product requires the app owner to submit an API access request. From the API product overview page, click Access in the page's top right navigation bar. You can now select the app that you like to create a contract for. Enter the first characters of your app name in the search field, or select your app from the app names that are displayed. We will use the app we just created. Select Test Sandbox Client. Click Next to select the API endpoint that you want this app to access. Select Sandbox and click Save to save and submit your access request. For a sandbox endpoint, the contract between app and API is automatically created and activated. For a live endpoint, the request will have to be reviewed and activated by the API owner. The Akana API gateway will only accept requests from clients once a contract has been activated. So first, the client has to present its credentials by means of a token for authentication, and second, the state of the contract determines whether runtime API access is actually granted. Access to sandbox and live endpoints each require a distinct access request, resulting in a distinct contract. With an activated contract in place, you are now ready to test access to the API. The API portal offers built-in test client capabilities. Continue with the next guide in this series to learn how to use Test Client to test and validate your API product. In this guide, we have shown you how you can create an app that represents a client identity and how you can establish a contract between app and API. As an API admin, you can do so once you are ready to test and validate your secured API. Essentially, you act as a prospective consumer of your own API product.